3 words. That is all it took to expose everything happening inside the number 8 Richard Childress Street Racing team right now. Same S every week. That was crew chief Jim Pullman's response after his spotter tried to hold the team together mid-race at Bristol Motor Speedway. Not a rallying cry, not an adjustment call, just flat, exhausted resignation from the man responsible for making the car go fast. And when those words hit the airwaves, every NASCAR fan listening knew this was no longer just about one bad Sunday. To understand why Bristol hit so differently, you have to start with where RCR stood going into the weekend. Kyle Busch was sitting 24th in points. His teammate Austin Dillon was 27th. Neither driver had recorded a single top 10 finish through 8 races in 2026. That is not a slow start. That is an alarm going off. Richard Childress himself went on record before Bristol and said something that should have raised eyebrows immediately. We're missing something. We've got to find, people say, what is it? If we knew, we'd fix it, but we're working hard to figure it out, and we're going to get there. That is not the language of a team that has a solution around the corner. That is the language of an organization genuinely searching in the dark. Then there is the contract layer. RCR announced in May 2025 that it picked up Busch's option through the 2026 season. That means this is the final guaranteed year on the current deal. Every race matters. Every result either builds a case or tears one down. On top of that, 2026 marks Busch's first season working with Pullman as his crew chief. A brand new relationship that was supposed to inject fresh energy into the program. And Bristol on paper was exactly where that fresh start could catch fire. Busch is the active wins leader at the 0.533 mile Tennessee Oval with 8 Cup Series victories there, more than any other active driver. Childress even said before the race, "I feel good about going there." The history was there. The track knowledge was there. What followed was not. Busch spent the majority of Sunday buried deep in traffic, fighting a car that simply would not cooperate. The core problem was rear grip, or the total lack of it. He could not get the number 8 Chevrolet to rotate into the corners, and no adjustment the team made seemed to change that reality. On lap 277, Pullman reached his breaking point with the car's behavior and went directly to spotter Derek Nealon for answers. What is the freaking problem now? Is the thing sideways or is it plowing? What the expletive does it look like? Nealon responded that the car was still not getting into the corner. Pullman pushed harder. Why? I don't get it. We tightened it up, and why can't it get in the corner? Nealon's answer was blunt and honest. I don't know. I've got a headset on, not a helmet. I don't know. Then came lap 313. Riley Herbst made contact with the number 8, sending Busch spinning. He kept going after slight contact with Eric Jones's trailing car, but the damage to his race position was done. He was now running around 30th with more than half the race remaining. What happened next on the radio is what turned a frustrating race into a national NASCAR story. Under the caution following the Herbst spin, Nealon addressed the pit box directly. His message was a plea for unity. Listen, I know you're frustrated. I don't like running 30th either, but us yelling at each other during the race isn't going to help. Like, we've got to keep the glue molded together here. We're all still in it together, and it's not over. We're only barely halfway through this thing. You copy? Pullman's response, yeah, copy. Just same's it every week. That one sentence revealed everything. Not frustration about Bristol specifically, not frustration about the Herbst contact, frustration about a pattern, a repeating cycle that the crew chief himself felt powerless to break. And throughout this entire exchange, Kyle Busch said almost nothing. For a driver known for being one of the most vocal competitors in the garage, that silence was its own statement. The exchange was not the sound of a team having a tough afternoon. It was the sound of a team that has been having the same tough afternoon week after week and is starting to run out of belief that the next week will be any different. Busch later said post-race, "Not the finish any of us wanted for the number 8 Bank OZK Chevrolet here this afternoon at Bristol Motor Speedway. We battled the rear of the car the entire race, and despite the best efforts of the team, we got a lap down in the 3rd stage and were never able to get back that track position." Then came the moment that nearly rewrote the entire race result. On lap 497 of a scheduled 500, with Ty Gibbs leading and cruising toward what would have been his first Cup Series win, Busch made sustained contact with Herbst. Deliberate payback for the earlier spin. The contact brought out the 9th and final caution of the race. That one move completely reset the ending. Instead of Gibbs coasting home, Ryan Blaney and Kyle Larson suddenly had a restart opportunity on fresher tires. Gibbs had stayed out under the previous caution on old rubber, and now he had to defend against 2 of the fastest drivers in the field on a 2-lap overtime shootout. There is real irony buried in this moment too. Busch's frustration nearly cost Ty Gibbs, a driver who has faced enormous pressure throughout his career because of his last name and his position within the Joe Gibbs racing system. His first career win, Gibbs held on. He beat Blaney to the finish line by just 0.055 seconds, the closest margin at Bristol since Rusty Wallace beat Ernie Irvan by 1 foot in April of 1991. Larson finished 0.229 seconds behind in third. There are two honest ways to read Busch's retaliation. The first is straightforward Bristol tradition, short track justice, an eye for an eye, the kind of move that has defined this track's identity for decades. The second reading is harder to ignore. Busch only had that opportunity to retaliate because he was running 25th. If the number 8 team had genuine race-winning pace on Sunday, he is never in that position. The retaliation became the headline precisely because the underlying performance never gave him a clean race to run. Through 8 races in 2026, Busch holds an average finish of 22.0. His best result is a 12th place at the Circuit of the Americas road course. Bristol marked his 4th consecutive finish outside the top 20. For a driver with 63 Cup Series wins and a resume that still stands above almost everyone in the garage, those numbers are not just disappointing. They are genuinely alarming. Meanwhile, the rest of the garage keeps moving forward. Ty Gibbs just earned his first Cup win. Ryan Blaney is contending every week. Kyle Larson dominated 284 laps at Bristol. Tyler Reddick leads the point standings. Even Todd Gilliland drove from 35th to 6th at Bristol. The competition is not standing still while RCR searches for answers. The gap between what Childress said publicly before Bristol, "I feel good about going there," and what the number 8 radio revealed during the race captures the full picture. Optimism from the ownership level, resignation from inside the car. That disconnect is not sustainable. The schedule does not get easier immediately. Kansas is next on April 19th, followed by Talladega. Neither track offers the kind of historical comfort that Bristol was supposed to provide. Kansas does not carry the same Busch track record. Talladega is a super speedway where chaos decides outcomes more than car setup. The question the number 8 team has to answer before this season gets away from them entirely is this: can they solve the mechanical problems before they lose the internal belief that solutions are still possible? Fixing a car's rear grip is a technical problem. Fixing a crew chief who tells his spotter same every week on an open radio, that is a morale problem. And in NASCAR, those two problems require very different solutions. Bristol showed that RCR may now be dealing with both at the same time.